Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Babies in Common Show. I'm Jeanette.
And I'm Melissa. Welcome, listeners. As a reminder, any information shared during this show is not to be taken as medical advice. Please consult your own care providers for questions about you or your baby's health and visit babiesincommon.com/disclaimer to read more.
Great. So today is Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. December. Oh my gosh. And today we're going to be talking about fertility and why paying attention to your overall health, nutrition, mindset, and even your sleep can influence your ability to get pregnant. Our guest today is Sarah Clark, who's the author of Fabulously Fertile, Supercharge Your Fertility Naturally. And you can learn more about Sarah here today, as well as what she and her team do at fabfertile.com, F-A-B fertile.com. So thanks for joining us today, Sarah. We're excited to hear what you do. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. I'm glad that your assistant is a fan and reached out to us to be on our show. So
Yeah.
I have my own history of fertility issues that I've talked a bit about on the show before. So I'm excited to hear some new information.
Great.
But so functional nutrition, it sounds like that, has made a big difference in your life. So can you explain a little bit about what functional nutrition is?
Yeah, so as part of my team, we have functional nutrition practitioners, and basically it's using the foundation of functional medicine, which is really looking at the root cause of why illness is there to begin with. And a lot of times in the conventional side of things, it's a pill for an ill, whereas the functional side of things, it's always to ask why. So with functional nutrition, so we have access to functional testing. So we're looking at food sensitivity testing. We're looking at, we use the Dutch hormone test. We're looking at stool testing and hair tissue mineral analysis testing. So the testing that we use in our protocol. And then developing, but the testing is only the beginning. Some people get caught up with the testing, right? That's the beginning. So then you can develop that targeted action plan with diet and lifestyle changes. Some of these things are, it's simple, but not easy. And so it's making, a diet that's right for you, optimizing your sleep, making sure you prioritize that if there's issues with sleep, movement that's right for you, not too vigorous or, not too, not enough exercise. Then also looking at mindset. So it is to continue to ask why. We also do a blood chemistry review. So not to diagnose, we're not doctors, but to educate, what's been missed. And we see thyroid issues being missed. So, we look at a full thyroid panel, including antibodies. We regularly see issues with glucose, so blood sugar issues. And so looking at it through the blood chem, through the functional reference ranges, it just flags it earlier before it goes to disease. So it's for healthy people. So even though you're like, oh wait, my thyroid is fine, in conventional side of things, in functional, it's typically off. So those are some of the themes we see with infertility is hypothyroidism that's been missed, and it's typically that can be it's subclinical. So it's more, why is the thyroid off? Is there a gut infection? Is there something going on with the liver? What's been missed there? So we use those tests, and then we look at the blood chemistry review, and then looking at those foundational pieces: diet, sleep, exercise, and mindset, and then using targeted supplements to dig into why it's not working. And some people, like I coach a very type A, help people in the healthcare field, like doctors and nurses, lawyers, very type A people that they have done everything. They typically had at least one failed IVF and it hasn't worked. And so I could have people literally jumping through the Zoom call saying, give me the supplements. And while the supplements are great and the testing is good, there is an investment for the testing. It's equally important to work on your mindset, like you talked about before with, mindset. And Alice Domar is the pioneer of mind-body fertility.
Isn't Allie Domar the one that was the head of your clinic, Melissa?
Yes. Yeah.
Was she?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I'll get out.
Yeah, because she's from our state. So, and
Okay,
we've
cool.
heard her speak, and she's great.
Yeah, Harvard researcher,
Yep.
over 20 years of experience, and she is the pioneer of mind-body fertility.
Yep. Her book is right behind me.
Is it awesome? Yeah. So she's amazing, and so that people in her study, 50% of them within 6 months, got pregnant naturally, and then 2 years, like over 90% of them, became a mom somehow. So that was just doing mindset piece alone. I shouldn't say just, like, my mindset is really powerful. And we also include a spiritual component as well, because especially for someone, we get people that have been told, sorry, it's donor eggs for you, nothing's going to work. Or even if they've tried for years, right, and they've been through, multiple failed IVFs, they could feel in a very dark, hopeless place. So the spiritual component of, like, if you knew the soul of your baby was waiting, how would you
Mm.
navigate this journey differently? If
Oh, wow.
that looking at the signs and the synchronicities and being able to really tap into your intuition, like, that is equally important, because most of these, it's couples that we coach are typically the type A, pushing in the masculine energy, right? We need to, get more into the feminine side of things, which can be hard, because if you're into that, pushing and pull, like that kind of energy, but it's equally important, right? So the functional side of it is, it really looks at all of those, not all at once, because that's overwhelming, but it's a layering process.
It's so great to hear you talk about this stuff in this way, because I notice that in my lactation practice, where I'm working with people who have a low milk supply, so many of the exact same things you're talking about: insulin resistance, thyroid that's
Yeah,
subclinical,
that's
and
me.
all of the time they're being told, no, well, my doctor said I was fine. And I was like, well, I want to get labs done, and I'm going to ask for more labs. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm at least going to look at some guidelines that have been developed that your doctor probably isn't aware of. And I'll be able to see, ooh, you need to go see a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath, and like really figure this stuff out. And maybe eventually an endocrinologist, depending on the situation, right? But there are times where if we can just get those labs done, or just change your diet. Like sometimes it's just like, well, why don't, are you interested in changing your diet anyway to see if that helps with your inflammation and possibly leads to more milk? And some people are really committed and they go for it. And other people are like, oh, that sounds too hard. I'm like, okay, well, we can work with that. It's just a matter of giving you the menu of options. But you're right. Like it's like type A people who are like, I'll do it all. I'll do everything. What can I do? And those are, it's fun to work with all sorts of people, but so interesting sometimes where you're like, slow down, like enjoy
Oh
your
yeah,
baby
yeah,
too.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm listening to you talk, Sarah, about, optimizing your sleep, your nutrition, your physical activity, your mindset, and I don't see any negative side effects
Mm-hmm.
of any of those things. I mean, those
Yes.
things are going to be helpful to you in your fertility journey, in pregnancy, postpartum, lactation, in life as a human. I mean, optimizing those things, hashtag self-care, right? I mean, like, that's the ultimate self-care. Self-care is not, I saw an interesting meme on social media that was like, self-care is not a box of chocolates and a glass of wine by the fire. Self-care is doing the hard work to make you healthier, right? Like budgeting so you're not stressed about money. It's, going to bed on time so you get enough sleep. It's, making good healthy food choices. Like, that's self-care. It's not just, having a candy bar, which is also wonderful, and I I think that
For
people should
for
treat
two
themselves.
minutes.
So it's
So
all of
I'm
this.
curious,
Yes.
Sarah, though, is you're in Canada and there's different types of, socialized medicine up there. We have a close friend who's a doctor up there, and I know that some people can access additional care for money. And in the United States, like functional medicine, at least in our area in Massachusetts, seeing a functional medicine doctor would not be something typically covered. So, are you finding that even in Canada that people are, or even just your online presence, that people are excited to access the things you have because they can't otherwise find it in their area, I would assume? Or in Canada,
Yeah,
are things a little different?
we work with couples worldwide. Most of our clients actually are in the US, but it's up here, these tests are they're it's additional cost. So
Okay, so
it's
yeah.
cutting edge tests, unfortunately, that they're the best tests. That we don't have an affiliation with any of the labs. We use the best test available right now, and there is an investment to them.
Yeah, I
But
see a functional medicine doctor myself, and it's funny over the years. She's a friend as well. I've known her for years before she started her practice, but it's funny because I'll be like, well, what about this other test, this lab we went to 2 years ago? She goes, oh, we don't use those anymore. Now we're going to
yeah,
use this one.
yeah, yeah. So it
you know it,
changes, and yeah.
it does, and things are changing. It's not that, once you know better, you do better, right? It's once you learn new things, you try new things. And one thing I'd like our listeners to kind of, throw around in their head a little bit is this idea that if a conventional medicine doctor tells you that there is no nothing we can do, or it is what it is, or this is just the diagnosis. And they don't have anything to offer to you other than medication, which, mind you, I take some medications. I am not anti Western medicine. I am a Western medicine trained nurse. There's a place for medication 100%. So I'm not, but there have been many times in my life where, for example, getting diagnosed at 27 with infertility, I hated that word, infertility. I did not feel like I was infertile. I felt like it's funny that we're having this conversation right now, because I would always tell people I'm not infertile, I'm subfertile. Right. And it's like, I kind of think that it's along the lines of what you're saying. Like, if all of these other issues are going on, if we can address them, maybe your fertility can, come back. And I wasn't infertile when they gave me, I had to take a medication to help me ovulate, and then I carried 3 healthy babies to full term and had spontaneous healthy vaginal deliveries with 0 complications. To me, that's not infertility. I was not infertile. I just needed help, with my eggs. and and maybe I could have done that on my own if I, had known about then what I know now. But regardless, it didn't, to me, feel like, to me, someone who is infertile, like, has their womb taken out. Like, if your womb has been taken out, like, that to me was like, I just didn't feel like I was infertile. Like, you're telling me at 27, my mother got pregnant, easy peasy with 4 kids, my grandmother 4 kids, my great grandmother 9, like that I'm infertile at 27. So,
Well, this goes back to like the language that people use that we talked about in our last episode.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just like encourage our listeners, like, if a conventional medicine doctor doesn't have a remedy for you, or their only remedy is a pill and you don't feel comfortable taking it, like I said, not that you should or shouldn't, I make no judgment. There are other practitioners that we have, talked to on this show, like chiropractors and functional medicine doctors and nutritionists and lactation consultants and acupuncturists, and that might, in their scope of practice, have something for you that might help. Like, it's just that it's not that there isn't anything. It's that in their lens, as a conventional doctor that practices Western medicine, they don't have a tool in their toolbox. That doesn't mean that somebody else's toolbox doesn't have a tool. I feel like we can benefit from all of these complementary medication, medicines together. Right. Although I am not having any more babies, just to be clear. No more. I'm giving away all my maternity clothes. And one of my friends said, "You know what happens when you do that?" I said, "You shut your mouth."
Yeah. That is what they say. So your journey to becoming a fertility coach started with your own infertility diagnosis at the tender young age of 28, and you had a plethora of health issues. Can you share your story and what got you to do what you do, and share a little bit more about what you do there?
Yeah, for sure. So in my early 20s, I remember having irregular cycles. I was getting my cycle a couple times a year. I had a weird fungal rash on my chest, and I had some yeast infections, and I started getting acne. So in my teens, I had great skin. All of a sudden, in my 20s, started getting acne. So first line of defense, went to see my physician, and I was put on the birth control pill. So went on the birth control pill and hormonal birth control pill, and nothing really improved. The acne still stayed the same. Obviously, my cycles started to regulate, but it was falsely regulating. So I had this life plan of getting married at 25 and having my kids at 28. So we got married at 25, and then yeah, I know. It's almost 25 years. I'll be married this year. So
congratulations.
Awesome.
Yeah. So and that, yeah, so then wanted to have my kids when I was 28. So I went in and went to see my OBGYN and was told by her that I had premature ovarian failure, which is a loss of function of the ovaries before the age of 40, and told the only way I'd ever have children is by using donor eggs. And I remember her, grabbing the IVF brochure and telling me that, off you go to IVF and, get on the list for donor eggs. And I didn't take any time to grieve. I didn't take any time to get a second opinion. I was like, okay, here we go. I didn't listen to any of those other health issues that I was talking about before. So I went off and got on a list for a donor egg. And we're lucky enough on the first transfer to have our daughter, and she just turned 19. So this is, back in the day when you said donor eggs, people are like, I don't even know what the heck that even is.
Yeah. I mean, the technology to even, freeze eggs like that was pretty new.
Yeah, exactly. And now you've got embryo adoption and embryo donations of all the IVF procedures that have gone on. You've got all of the little embryos waiting. I had someone on my podcast, and they were talking about they actually did transfer with a little embryo that had been waiting there for 13 years, and so
Oh my
she has
gosh.
two children who are 1 and 3, and the natural siblings are 13 or 14 to these children. So it's science
Wow.
can do some cool stuff. So yeah. And then we had 2 embryos left over. Wanted to have our kids close together. So after a year, went back into the clinic and went to have the transfer. I was like super like determined to have them close together and kind of stressed out about it. My husband's like, Sarah, hang on. I'm like, no. Went in there, and then unfortunately that didn't work. So then we went on another list for a separate donor, and then we were lucky enough on the first transfer to have our son. So he's 16. So the kids are 3 years apart. Um, yeah, so very fortunate to have our children, because even people think you do donor eggs, and there's only a 50% success rate of that working. We think that
Hmm.
once we've chosen the donor egg route, that's it's guaranteed, but that it's not the case.
Now, I
Um,
have a question. How were you diagnosed with premature ovarian failure? Did you try for a year before they did some blood work?
Yeah. So I hadn't really because I was still on the pill, and then and some of this is kind of foggy because it's like I don't know if I have like brain fog with it, or if I just
Yeah,
have
it makes
like
a
No,
long
your
vague.
time.
mom. It's your mom.
Yeah,
It's
It
we
yeah,
was a
all
long
do
time ago too.
it.
yeah, exactly. It's many years ago, right? So, but I did have the blood test, and my FSH was of a menopausal woman. So, and
Okay.
I didn't have any there's no follicles. It was basically like knowing what I know now, like there was everything was missed. But anyways, that's all. That's a whole other thing. So it's we get stuck on our diagnosis instead of looking at the whole body. And for me, I was told that FSH, and at that point they weren't even looking at the AMH, so the anti-Müllerian hormone. They weren't even looking at that. It was just the FSH. It's high, and POF. It was like you've got a 5% success, 5% chance of this working with your own eggs, and basically you're gonna get osteoporosis, heart issues, and it's like all doom and gloom if you looked
Mm.
Right. And for those
back.
that might not know the
Yeah,
fertility
POF.
lingo, yeah, POF is premature ovarian failure, which is what you're describing.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
also FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. And so that's what, stimulates your ovaries to pop out an egg. And if it's really, really high, it means that your body's trying really, really hard to get you to ovulate. And that's not normal if you're not, perimenopausal, basically. So,
Mhm.
okay, you continued to have after you had your children, which are miracle for so many reasons, right? Science and miracle, and but you continued to have health issues, right? Like chronic bladder infection, chronic sinus infections, chronic yeast infections, vertigo, seasonal allergies, eczema. I mean, the list goes
Ugh.
on. So, what brought you to functional nutrition and the realization of what was really going on? I'm curious to know what was really going on.
Yeah, so I had that health crisis, and really at the time I was in corporate HR for years, and I was still doing my things. Just my immune system was very low. So at that point, I took a life coaching course, decided I really wanted to get to health and wellness after taking that life coaching course, and then that's where I discovered I had these food sensitivities. So for me, taking out gluten and dairy, and then later corn. A couple years later after that, then I discovered I had food sensitive. I had gut infections, so H. pylori and streptococcus and fungal infections. And then really the whole underneath all of this was chronic stress. So I didn't discover this till I was 40, I was fully in menopause. And, it's now I help couples that have that POI or the POF, so premature ovarian insufficiency or premature ovarian failure diagnosis, the low AMH, which basically you're being told that you've got a very low ovarian reserve, and your chances of conception with natural or IVF are very low. So we help them get pregnant naturally or improve their chances of success with their own eggs, by looking at the functional side of things. So looking at those, and most people, when we're thinking of hormonal issues, we get so stuck on that egg health that we're not looking at the whole body. And so for me, with the food sensitivities, and once I started taking those out of my diet, lo and behold, the chronic bladder, yeast, and sinus infections started going away, and then digging deeper to optimize gut health too. So that
But
helped.
how did you like connect the two? Because you were much older then. So how did you look back and go, I feel better. I'm avoiding gluten and dairy and corn and everything's clearing up. Huh, this must be connected to my fertility.
So I'll never know for sure. I didn't discover this till I was 40, so I was fully in menopause. But
But you're
after
working with
helping,
people now where you're
yeah,
noticing that they
exactly,
do that. And like, so how does that connection happen in the body?
yeah,
What's the
yeah. So
truth or
it's
the theory or the science behind it?
yeah, so it's really like looking at all the basically, what we place on our fork every day, and will impact our health, and it's causing inflammation in your body. So your body wants to survive, not procreate. And a lot of times where we don't think that that the stressor of the food sensitivity is causing an issue, that the basically it's all inflammation. And how do we reduce inflammation in the body? So food sensitivities can cause inflammation, gut infections. Obviously, if you have a gut infection, and we see people with these with infertility diagnoses with parasites and fungal infections and bacteria infections, and then the environmental toxins that we're all exposed to, um, whether it's the personal care, so the toxins that are going on our body, which are impacting our endocrine system, the water that we're drinking. Tap water has over 300 pollutants in it, so we're drinking tap water, whether it's the EMFs, so the electromagnetic frequencies from our phone, that's impacting our body. So all of these stressors. And then also for fertility, it's also the mental emotional stress. They liken an infertility diagnosis to a cancer diagnosis.
Hmm.
And also 50% of people that have infertility, studies have shown that they actually have PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's extremely, trauma is if you view it as traumatic. So if you view it as traumatic, that's what it is. And yeah, so we look to address all those stressors in the body.
Yeah, when I went through my own infertility journey, two things that you talked about kind of make me think of. One is the organization that I was going through had an world renowned separate part of the clinic that was basically focused all on mindfulness and stress reduction. And there's a lot of good science behind that and helping with fertility issues. So I mean that's real. And mindfulness and stress reduction, being in chronic fight or flight as someone who also struggles with anxiety disorder, that's not good for being pregnant or trying to get pregnant or anything like that. It's funny because my great grandmother, who has since passed away, but she was in her 90s when I got married, and she would say to me, Melissa, you have to not be so anxious. When you get pregnant, it's going to go right into your milk. All that anxiety is going to go right into your milk. And like, I know that that's not true, like scientifically, but I get what she's saying, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you are constantly secreting, cortisol and adrenaline, and, those put stresses on your body. And so that was just her way of saying, like, take a chill pill, Melissa.
That's sort of like telling someone to relax. Like, you don't just go, oh
Exactly.
my God, you're right, I'll calm down, which is why like there's mindfulness practices and people who lead those types of things and yoga. And I know, Sarah, you guys have like a program for that. I know there's other providers of those services all around the world, really. So being able to connect with the one that resonates with you is really important too.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to mention is, you mentioned that receiving a infertility diagnosis has been likened to receiving a cancer diagnosis in how impactful that is to like the core of who you feel like you are. And like as a human being at our most basic primal instinctual level, like we want to, many people, I can say everybody, but wants to procreate, right? And so being told that you can't do the most basic thing that, like, horny teenagers seem to be able to pull off in the back of a station wagon, like it's,
Life is
it's
not
hard.
fair.
It's
Yeah.
not fair, right? And so when you said, I got the diagnosis and I just acted, I didn't even give myself a chance to grieve. I remember the same feeling. I was 27 when I was told I would never be able to get pregnant without IVF, which wasn't true. I did get pregnant with the help of ovulation medication called Clomid, but the doctor that I saw, she reassured me as I'm sobbing at my first appointment. She said, "Oh, don't worry, Melissa, you're young. We'll get you pregnant." And the way, and then she, like you said, like handed me this IVF brochure, and I had just received this diagnosis. By that point I had 2 miscarriages. I've been trying for 2 years, and I was the peak of health, and I was like, wait, we're already going to this? Like, I mean, I understand that you're a fertility doctor, and when you are holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail, but I just was blindsided by the fact that at the age of 27, they were already talking to me about IVF. I felt like there's got to be something before that, that I can try. So, that really speaks to me what you say about that, because it's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we see many people that come to us, they have at least, one failed IVF or more. And meanwhile, a lot of these underlying factors have not being addressed. And it's, that's why I have my podcast, Get Pregnant Naturally, to really spread the word. There's things we can do. I don't think anyone's first choice is IVF, but I think people have done some generalized recommendations. Most people have changed some of their diet, maybe thrown out some toxins, done these things, but that's why we take a very targeted action plan to see, what's been missed. And we're all different. Take the personalized plan, and then you can actually either get pregnant naturally or improve your chances of success with IVF.
Yeah.
So but in our culture, it's our society kind of says here, here's, you go to see your OBGYN like I did, and the OBGYN gives you the brochure and off you go, and you just get swept up in that. And like me, consider myself an educated, somewhat smart person, didn't get a second opinion. Like, really? I didn't get a second opinion on that.
Well, I think because of modern life, people are delaying children, or whatnot. When my parents are only in their 50s. I mean, they got pregnant with me when they were 19 years old, and even back then, it was pretty common that you just like got married and had kids out of high school. I mean, that's not that long ago. I'm only 37, so um, naturally people's fertility is going to be better the earlier they start having children. So I feel like when people kind of put the pressure on themselves, like you did, Sarah, like, well, I had a plan, I had a life plan, right? We see these people that
Oh yeah.
are successfully pregnant and come into childbirth class, Jeanette, right? That like, well, I have a
Mm-hmm.
birth plan. And we're like, well, we want you to have an idea of what you want in birth, but we really can't plan.
I had one of those too.
So,
Threw out the window.
so it's like when you try for the prescribed 6 to 12 months and it doesn't happen, and no one's giving you any education about how your body works and wellness and optimizing fertility. When someone says, well, if you're over 35, try for 6 months, and if you're under 35, try for 12, and if you haven't gotten pregnant, then I'll give you a referral to fertility. When I worked as an OBGYN office nurse, you would be shocked. Maybe not you, Sarah, but I mean, I think people would be floored by the amount of people that didn't even understand the basics of conception that were trying to get pregnant. Adult people, America. I know you're talking to us from Canada, but Americans do a terrible job educating their youth about sex ed. It's basically like, just don't do it. Like, that's what they say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, people, and you mentioned like you were put on the birth control pill. That's one thing else I want to talk about is that it regulated your cycle, quote unquote, but it was falsely regulating. A lot of people don't understand, and I'm not anti-birth control pills. I used them to not get pregnant for a very long time because I wasn't ready, and it worked well for me. But a lot of people think like, oh, I've always had regular periods. I've always had regular periods. And I talked to them further, and they've been on the birth control pill since they were 16 or 17 years old. I'm like, you haven't been having periods. You've had a hormone-induced withdrawal bleed every 4 weeks since you were 16 years old. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but that's not your natural cycle. You have no idea what your natural cycle is. You're having a hormone-induced withdrawal bleed. And they were flabbergasted, blown away. Oh yeah, I have a regular period every 28 days because I've been on Lutera for the last, 16 years. I'm like,
They're not sponsoring this podcast, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Sure. So I'm going to take a
right.
moment in the middle of our show here to ask everybody who's listening to visit babiesincommon.com/show to view all our previous episodes and share them with your friends and family. And our show is available as a video recording on our website, as well as a podcast on our website, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. So be sure to click the subscribe button on whatever device you have so you can catch all future episodes.
And that's right, Jeanette. You wouldn't want to miss a single one. And we hope you take this opportunity to pause right now and hop on over to the Babies in Common Facebook page or Google listing, or even your podcast app, to write a positive review for us today and help us reach more families. And lastly, please visit our website or social media channels to learn more about groups, classes, and other services we offer, as well as plenty of tips and resources to help you rock your birth and thrive as a new parent. Okay, back to our show.
Yeah.
we like the healing roundtable. So you have the RE, the OBGYN, your fertility coach, your nutrition practitioner, masseuse, chiro, acupuncture, but you're in the center. And so you don't use them all at once, but you draw on them and you know your body best.
Oh, I love that.
And a lot of times, we go straight when we have the infertility diagnosis, we go straight to the OBGYN and then the RE, the reproductive endocrinologist. And we forgot to listen to our body. We forgot that all those other practitioners that can help us. And we get kind of, brainwashed by the person in the white coat saying, this is the only path for you. And we forget to question and be our own advocate.
What did you call that? The fertility roundtable?
The healing roundtable.
Healing
It's
roundtable.
from,
I love
Dr.
that.
Oz. I think it's from Dr.
Oh,
Oz.
is it?
Really?
Yeah.
I like that.
Dr. Oz. Huh, all right. Are you finding that, I mean, I know you're in Canada, but you work with a lot of families from all around the world. Are there places or providers that are learning more and more about that, like traditional OBs, I should say, and reproductive endocrinologists that are talking about nutrition and functional tests and mindfulness? Is that more and more happening now, or not so much anymore? Not so much still?
Like, I interview a lot of functional doctors on my podcast, Get Pregnant Naturally. So, but like, to me, I haven't found a reproductive endocrinologist yet that has a functional standpoint. Some of them, some clinics can be a little more progressive. I think the mindset piece is people are incorporating that. Acupuncture, hypnosis, people are starting to incorporate that with fertility clinics. But some of it is just, to me, this is a grassroots, patient-driven movement that people will demand to have these things, available to them. And
as so many things are in what we do, Jeanette, right? Like,
right.
I can kick and scream from the rooftops that something isn't right, and until the patients are the ones demanding it.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And so that's how it's going to change. I think we're waiting for it's not their fault. Doctors only receive a week or 2 weeks of nutrition training, so they don't know the power of this. And so that's why a lot of burnt out physicians that are basically just prescribing medication and writing their prescription pad are moving to the functional approach to actually prevent and to ask why and to really have true healing. Because for chronic illness and autoimmune disease, the conventional medicine model is broken. It's let's give everybody medication until that doesn't work, and you haven't addressed the root cause. So this is similar with infertility. Why are we pumping women full of medication when there's all these other issues going on? Like, for me, when you talk about the low milk supply, like I had that. After 4 months, my milk dried up. I had both my kids with C-sections. I had that whole birth plan where I went crazy and was bringing in everybody to teach me how to breathe. Didn't have to use any of that. But because I hadn't addressed my health beforehand, both my postpartum period, I wouldn't say I had postpartum depression, but I definitely had some sort of rage, or I've heard postpartum rage now, but like for me, it was like irritability, just irritable, like cranky. So my hormones are out of balance. And then both my kids have food sensitivities. My daughter had tubes in her ears and ear infections and bedwetting and like all these things that are linked to food sensitivities. And as we, change the diet for both the kids, and there's mood issues too. So, a lot of those things could have been potentially, not happen if I had have focused on my preconception health. And that's why it's like, take at least 6 months. Like, why do we spend 12 to 18 months planning for our wedding? And then we're like, ooh, the first month, let's get pregnant. Like, let's switch that around, save money on the wedding, and invest, at least a year into your fertility. Most people I see.
Sarah, you are preaching to the choir.
Oh God, right?
people take out second mortgages to pay for their wedding and won't take childbirth class. And I'm like horrified.
Yeah.
Like, how much did you spend on your iPad or your phone? Like, there's all these things, and like, I think, of course, there are situations, and I don't know your whole story, Sarah. You said you had 2 C-sections. Like, sometimes people really need a C-section. And
absolutely,
Melissa and I are really really trying to hit it home in our birth classes about how we can't prevent this. But what we hope is that we get to a point where if someone has a C-section, they can look back and go, well, we tried this, we tried this, we tried this, we tried this, and this is why. Let's have an awesome cesarean. And then if there's no milk or your baby's not having a good, a good experience, more like the more milk, because we're talking about the inflammation, we go, okay, what's happening with your milk supply? Let's seek out some help and really thoroughly look at that. And so many people are like, oh, well, I don't know if I can afford that. I'm like, formula is more expensive and formula is necessary and I'm glad it's there. But if someone wants to get pregnant, if someone wants to have, a great birth experience, no matter how it ends up happening, and if somebody wants to feed their baby with their own milk or as much of their own milk as they can, then sometimes we need to get more information and support and care in order to make all that happen. So it's just you're the start of that chain. I love that, Sarah. It's exciting. And so then they can finish their planning and work with us as well if they'd like to. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that across the world. So before we go, I wonder if you could just share a few recommendations about increasing fertility or changes people could implement very quickly, or more simply, I should say. Anything that you sort of start with recommendations?
Yeah, we start people off, actually both the partners doing the elimination diet. It's the gold standard to figure out if you have a food sensitivity. So you're taking out the top allergens and then systematically reintroducing them after 10 days to see exactly how food impacts your body. Most people that come to us would say they don't have a food sensitivity. I'd say 100% of people do. So I believe actually everyone should do an elimination diet at least once in their life to see how food impacts their body. And the people that we're working with, it's not a sick population. It's a population that wants to have their baby. But, even then they'll be like, wow, I never knew I could feel this great after taking out whatever foods they've discovered,
I love
their
that you
body.
said 10 days because I usually hear 30 days and 30 sounds so much harder.
Yeah, so it's 10 days and then systematically over the course of 30, keeping out gluten the longest. So gluten and dairy being the top allergen. So you're taking out gluten, dairy, corn, soy, peanuts, eggs, and processed sugar, taking that out 10 days and reintroducing. You may not want to do it over the holiday season. But
I could do the 10. I mean, I've gone off dairy and gluten before for, gosh, I don't even know whether it was 6 weeks or not. I definitely felt better. But I need to motivate again, but I keep looking at that website, the Whole30.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, that's a lot of food to take out. And I know there's a lot of foods left that are lovely, but 30 days seems so daunting. So maybe we could do 10.
Yeah, it is looking kind of, people get like, oh, when are you going to give up? But I don't do dairy, gluten, or dairy, gluten, or corn. And I just made something before we came up here. And it was like some sausage with some sweet potato and some jalapeno and what else did I put in there? Some kale, and whipped it up in a pan, 15 minutes, done. And there's no deprivation. So it is to me for fertility, to see how food impacts your body, and then making sure you do have organic. We're in the middle of a huge food experiment with our food being sprayed with glyphosate, which is a herbicide linked to infertility and a whole host of other diseases. So making sure that you're going organic. If that's too cost prohibitive, then doing the dirty dozen, making sure those foods.
Yeah, you can look up the dirty dozen online. That's a great list.
Yeah.
Although one thing, and I know this is not at all the case for every person, but some people say to me like, well, you go organic, like that's so expensive. And I was like, listen, if you only shop organic and those are the prices you get to know, then you don't know that something else is cheaper.
And also being sick is expensive too.
Right.
And,
that's true.
Lost days from work and not feeling good, and infertility in this case,
Or sometimes the co-pays for medications down here in the US are very expensive too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No,
So I'd
that's
look
true.
at the diet for both you and your partner. Even if it is female factor infertility, I would have him change his diet along with you. It's not just about you making all these changes.
Good point.
Yeah. And then also looking at drinking water, I would say, like, as a basic thing. You want to drink at least 50 to 75% of your body weight in ounces in water a day. I for years was chronically dehydrated drinking tap water. So now I have, water by my side, and making sure it's filtered. I like a Berkey, or Aquasana is a good one too. So making sure you have filtered water. It's crucial for your cervical mucus, for the egg to the sperm to get to the egg. So basics there. And then for mindset, so set up some sort of something's going to work for you with that. Yeah, that hashtag self-care, but it is like, what helps you slow down? Is it reading a book? Is it spending, 5 minutes a day meditating? Is it taking a bath? Like whatever it is, as far as self-care, and then get used to, start exercising the muscle, saying no and mean it. And you don't need to give an explanation. No,
That's a
but I
great
gotta
one.
blah, 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 blah. Just no.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know we were running late today, right, for this podcast, and I hesitated. I was like, as women, we need to stop doing this. I hesitated writing to you and you're going, I am so sorry, we're running late. I was like, no, I'm just going to say we're running late.
Yep.
I'll see you at 6.
It's fine. Right? Yeah, I know. Women want to give an explanation. That's this and that and blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah.
It just happens. Yeah. All right. So how can people find you? So fabfertile.com, is that sort of the main place?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on the podcast. So Get Pregnant Naturally. It's on iTunes or Spotify, and also I have a fertility diet freebie. They can go to Fertility Diet Freebie, and there's a 3-day fertility diet challenge, all filled with chef prepared recipes, foods they can start eating today, so they can get that at Fertility Diet Freebie.
Cool.
I might try it, even though I'm not trying to increase my fertility.
We should do it together. Melissa, we'll do it together. We'll be our accountability partners.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay. I will do that with you, knowing that my Mirena is tucked quite nicely inside of my uterus, so that I don't accidentally get pregnant with Sarah's diet.
as is my copper.
Okay. So this has been such a wonderful conversation.
I'm glad you found us, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Awesome. All right. So we're excited to share this all around. We're going to spread this all around the world, we hope. It always comes back to listening to our bodies and eating healthy foods and advocating for ourselves until we get the care we need, right? So I'm so excited that you shared this, and I hope people will go and check out your podcast, and your people, once they get pregnant, they can check out ours and what we offer as well.
Say, Sarah, you've got to send them our way after they get pregnant and say, come to
we're
Babies
doing
in
everything
Common.
online. We're doing it all online now.
Even if they're in Canada.
Yep, absolutely.
So thank you so much. Yeah, you've given our listeners certainly a lot to think about, and better yet, to act upon. If anybody's interested in learning more about functional medicine, episode 23 of our show, we interviewed Dr. Julia Resnick about her functional medicine practice. So be sure to check out episode 23 of the Babies in Common show. And we hope you enjoyed today's show with Sarah Clark. And we hope that you will tune in again. Remember, Babies in Common is a community for you. After all, we all have
babies in common. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.